Hi Nada, fantastic work submitting your second batch of essays. This is really good to see, and great work towards improving your English. I've had a look at both already and they're looking really good. So what we'll do is we'll look at them a little bit closer and see if there's anything that we can improve on. Okay. So you had the first one, which was the bar chart diagram. Let's have a read through. This bar chart depicts the sales by chip manufacturer of France during 2017. Clearly, the trend of sales is fluctuated throughout the time span. According to what is shown, there's been steady increase in the level of Intel sales in the first quarter. Then a sudden collapse came shortly in April. Then sales shot up and reached a peak before failing drastically to be at 25,000, then maintaining the same level in the next 3 months. Evidently, the sales numbers have kept a steady climb in the end of the period. On the other hand, ADM sales numbers in the first quarter were at 25,000, then it rocketed suddenly to reach the peak before it dropped again to almost 30,000. The sales leveled for the next 2 months, then fell gradually to reach its lowest point. In the first of the third quarter, the sales shot up, then it fluctuated in the next 3 months, then surprisingly sales dipped to be at almost 7,000. In the end of the year, there was a modest climb in the sales levels. To sum up, we could say that the trend of Intel sales was high most of the year, whereas ADM sales have been passing through big drops. Okay, well done. So this is a really detailed description of the diagram. You've got lots of information in here, which is good, and you've managed to compare the two companies as well. Let's look a little bit closer. So this bar chart depicts the sales by chip manufacturer. Here we would say computer chip manufacturers, okay, just to make it really clear, in France during 2017. Okay, good. Clearly, comma, the trend of sales is fluctuated throughout the time span. Okay, so here we, instead of is fluctuated, so the passive form, we would use instead clearly the sales fluctuate throughout the year because it's 2017, so throughout the year. So clearly, comma, the sales fluctuate throughout the year. According to what is shown, there has been a steady increase in the level of Intel sales in the first quarter. Now, because 2017 is finished, we don't use the present perfect. It's a good structure, but it's not the right one here. So instead, we'd say, according to what is shown, there was a steady increase in the level of Intel sales in the first quarter, then a sudden collapse shortly after, comma, in April. Okay. Instead of collapse, we would probably say a sudden drop or a sudden decline, D-E-C-L-I-N-E. Okay. Then sales shot up and reached a peak before falling, instead of failing, falling, F-A-L-L-I-N-G, drastically, to be at 25,000. Okay. Now, 25,000 is not plural. And we can actually write the number because we're talking about a diagram. So we can use 25,000, 25,000. Good. So falling drastically, or good, before falling drastically to be at 25,000. Then maintaining the same level in the next 3 months. Good. Well done. Some really good descriptions there and some nice vocabulary used. Evidently, comma, the sales numbers have kept a steady climb in the end of the period. Okay, so evidently, comma, the sales numbers have risen steadily at the end of the year. Okay, so they have risen, R-I-S-E-N, steadily, S-T-E-A-D-I-L-Y, at the end of the year. Good. Okay, so that was your analysis of Intel, which is good. Then you go on to analyze ADM. So on the other hand, good use of that one. ADM sales numbers in the first quarter were at 25,000. So same as this one here, so we can use the digits. Then it rocketed suddenly to reach its peak before it dropped again to almost 30,000. Okay, well done. Nice use of rocketed. It's good. What I would say is just to end the sentence after that one. Okay, so again, dropped again to almost 30,000. Full stop, because otherwise it becomes a really long sentence. Then new sentence, capital T, the sales levelled for the next 2 months, then fell gradually to reach, no ED, its lowest point, or the company's lowest amount. Okay, good. In the first of the third quarter, so possibly here at the beginning of the third quarter, the sales shot up, then it fluctuated in the next 3 months. Then surprisingly, so here we'd have to have then, comma, surprisingly, comma, sales dipped to almost 7,000. Same idea with 1,000 as the previous two. At the end of the year, comma, there was a modest climb in sales levels. So maybe here a modest increase or a modest rise in sales levels. Well done. Good. Like I said, a really detailed analysis, which is great to see. Let's just look at your conclusion. So to sum up, we could say that the trend of Intel sales was high most of the year. So here we could say that Intel sales were high most of the year, whereas ADM sales whereas ADM sales had big decreases. Okay. So it had big decreases. The same here with have been. Because we're in 2017 for this analysis, we can't really use the present perfect because it is something that is already finished. So we'd have to stick with the past simple. But a very good analysis and very detailed, which is great. Also, your use of synonyms for rise and fall. You've got falling, reach a peak, shot up. Some really nice ones in there. So very well done. Dipped as well was a good one to use, and it really explains it well. Great work. Well done. Let's have a look at your second piece now then. So this is your second piece, which is the essay debating the restoration of buildings, whether we should spend money on restoring buildings or spend money on infrastructure. Good. Okay, so experts throughout both the developing and developed world have debated whether spending money on restoration is worthy or the money should be spent on providing new buildings and roads developments. This essay will discuss both sides using examples from the UK government and Oxford University to demonstrate points and prove arguments. Okay, a great introduction there. You've got a nice kind of summarising or presenting the argument, and then what your essay will do. So this is a nice, concise introduction. Let's look at it a little more closely. So experts throughout both the developing and developed world, really good, have debated whether spending money on restoration is worthy or whether the money should be spent on providing new buildings and road, no S, developments. Okay, good. So it's just that part in the middle where we've got the comma. Okay, so we should say is worthy or whether the money should be spent on providing new buildings and road, no S, developments. Good, well done. This essay will discuss both sides using examples from the UK government and Oxford University to demonstrate points and prove arguments. Well done. Like I said, a really strong introduction, so good work there. So next one, there is ample evidence, good, that the government spends a huge amount of money on the restoration of old buildings. Okay, so a huge amount of money on the restoration of old buildings. The central reason behind this is twofold. Full stop there, we'll end the sentence there. And then we can go into those two reasons that make it twofold. So firstly, capital F, they think it is part of their duty towards maintaining the history and heritage of the country. Okay, good. Secondly, so we can keep this as the same paragraph, because we've already mentioned that the central reason is twofold, so they can go in the same paragraph here, so we don't need this large space. Secondly, they may convert these antique buildings to museums in the future. Okay, so they may convert these historical buildings instead of antique. Historical buildings. Antique is normally for an object, like a piece of furniture or, for example, a piece of jewellery. It doesn't really work with buildings, so they may convert these historical buildings to museums in the future. Good, well done. For example, recent research by the UK government, good, demonstrates, with an S, that 65% of the old buildings, with an S, in London have been transformed into fancy museums. Good. So then I think we should have a full stop there because we've got quite a lengthy sentence. So then new sentence, it must, instead of most, must, M-U-S-T, must not be forgotten that although the cost of repairing ancient buildings is expensive, the returns on the investments of them will be great. Okay, good. Now, ancient, be a little bit careful with this because ancient is an extreme adjective and it means really, really old. So, for example, in ancient Egypt or ancient Rome, and the buildings in London aren't ancient, but we could say repairing, here, I think it would be apt to use old buildings, would be okay. Or perhaps we could say things like cultural buildings, because they are old ones that are part of the culture and history. Earlier on we used historical, so we don't really want to use that one again. Okay, so it could be something like cultural buildings, old buildings would be okay as well. Is expensive. The return on the investment. So here, no S's. So the return on the investment will be great. No of them will be great. Therefore, with an E on the end, comma, it is conclusively clear that the government, in fact, is investing on repairing outdated buildings. Okay, good. Well done. So this last sentence just feels a little bit incomplete. I think what we should do is add in why they are repairing them. So, therefore, it is conclusively clear that the government, in fact, is investing in repairing outdated buildings for use by the public, because you've mentioned about museums here. Okay, good, okay. So, then you have your opposite side of the argument. Although there is a case that this money would be better spent, S-P-E-N-T, on providing more facilities and new residential units, this is largely because this is what people demand and expect from the government. Yeah, good, well done. For example, an extensive study by Oxford University, well done, great introduction to an example, showed that one of the essential needs of the vast majority of the population in the UK is obtaining a new house. Okay, to make this bit is obtaining a new house, to make it shorter, we could say is housing. Okay, consistent with this line of thinking is that economists, so economists, no capital E, because we're talking generally, economists advise, ADVISE, that the priority of the government spending should meet the real demands of the people. Well done. Great wording there. Thus, it is possible to state beyond doubt that government should concentrate on people's demands. Okay. Should concentrate on public demands. Okay. Now, in order to link this to the question, I think for this sentence, it would be good to say should concentrate on should concentrate on public demands rather than restoring old buildings. Okay, so one kind of rule of thumb of essay writing is to make sure that your paragraphs follow a structure which is point, first of all, which you've done is great. So you've outlined your point in both paragraphs. Evidence, just like you've got from Oxford University and from the UK government. So those are great. And then explanation. Now your explanation at the end of your paragraph needs to link back to the question. Just so we get a well-rounded sense of your analysis, and that to show the examiner that you are constantly thinking of the question and not going anywhere other than the question. Okay, so we have to make it really, really clear to the examiner every time. And the best way we can do that is with the last sentence of our paragraphs. Okay, so just like this one, where you said, therefore it is conclusively clear that the government in fact is investing on repairing the outdated buildings for use by the public. Okay, or to benefit the public, so why it is a good idea to do this. And then the opposite here, thus it is possible to state beyond doubt that the government should concentrate on public demands rather than restoring old buildings. So again, relating to that question for the essay. But yes, 2 really strong paragraphs there. You should be very proud of those. Well done. And great evidence from the UK government and Oxford University, and introduced very well. From the arguments and examples given, I firmly believe that although the government is expected to achieve the population targets, it is predicted that the government spending will be balanced between people's needs and investment resources. Okay. Good. Now, another rule of thumb in essay writing is to make your conclusion memorable if you can. Okay, so this is good as a summary, but what we can normally do at the end of a conclusion is to introduce our own opinion a little bit. So to say either what you think will happen in the future or which side you agree with, or we can really make the examiner think a little bit. So, for example, saying something like, it is yet to be seen whether restoration of old buildings will become more of a priority than infrastructure in the future, for example. Okay, so our conclusion is our opportunity to impress the examiner and leave that kind of final memory of our essay as a well-rounded, well-constructed piece of writing. But yes, very well done, an enjoyable essay to read and some huge positives in here, so you really should be very proud of that writing. Good work.